Welcome back to the deep dive. You sent us quite a stack of sources this week. It's a pretty concerning collection, really. News reports, updates, legislative briefs, all focused on this 2025 U.S. government shutdown.
hmm
So our mission today is to cut through that noise. We need to figure out what's actually happening on the ground now that the shutdown's rolling into, its third week, around day 14.
Yeah, about that. And look, this is more than just, political theater in Washington. These sources, they show specific programs really starting to buckle. We're
Right.
talking thousands of federal workers losing income, real economic friction building up day by day.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we need to distill those ripple effects, understand the strategies keeping this whole thing locked down.
Okay, let's start with the politics then. The core problem. We know it officially picked off October 1st. Congress couldn't pass the appropriations, not even a temporary fix, a continuing resolution.
That was the trigger point.
But the story of these last 2 weeks seems to be this absolute refusal to budge, like digging in on principle.
It really is a high-stakes standoff. The House, led by Speaker Mike Johnson, has drawn a very firm line. They're saying, basically, no negotiations on reopening until Democrats agree to end the shutdown first.
Which is unusual, right? Demanding the other side folds before you even talk.
It's a very aggressive posture, yeah. And it carries a risk,
Yeah.
serious public backlash the longer this drags on.
So the House is just waiting, putting the ball in the Senate's court.
Essentially challenging them to move first, yes. And we've seen the Senate try, right? They've attempted funding bills, sometimes even bipartisan ones.
Yeah. Reports say they're getting ready for the 8th vote soon.
Something like that.
But if they can't even get a bill through their own chamber, well, what does that tell us about the climate right now?
It tells us there's a profound lack of, leverage. And maybe consensus, too. Look at the tactical shift from the House recently. Speaker Johnson saying the House is done for now.
Yeah, I saw that. Shifting the responsibility.
Exactly. It's brilliant political maneuvering, maybe a bit cynical. He's deliberately putting the pressure, the responsibility for the next failure point, squarely onto the Senate.
So the Senate has to decide whether to risk another legislative defeat just to push the issue, or what? Accept the House's challenge.
That seems to be the choice they're facing. Meanwhile, another strategy seems to be emerging from some in the House.
The targeted funding.
Right. These standalone appropriations, small bills, funding specific things piece by piece.
Trying to restore bits of the government without tackling the big budget fight.
That's a really critical development to watch, because the aim seems to be removing the political pain points one by one.
How so?
Well, think about it. If they manage to pass a bill to fund, say, WIC, the Women, Infants, and Children program, some of that immediate political heat drops off, doesn't it?
Okay, yeah.
Even though the main budget impasse is still there. It lets them look like they're taking action, but without conceding on their bigger demands about spending limits.
So is that a sign of compromise starting? Or is it just another tactic, a tool to wear down the opposition?
I think it's overwhelmingly a tactic. These targeted bills, they can be like political poison pills for Democrats.
How do you mean?
Because if Democrats vote yes to fund only the most visible, popular programs, they ease that immediate humanitarian pressure,
Right.
which in turn reduces the urgency, the motivation maybe, to agree to a big comprehensive budget deal later. They're kind of being forced to choose,
Yeah.
help people now, or hold out for long-term budget stability.
And we're seeing the flip side too, right? Democrats trying to proactively defend some programs.
We are. They introduced a bill specifically on WIC, trying to protect it by making it mandatory spending.
Okay, let's break that down. For listeners not deep in the legislative weeds, what's mandatory spending mean exactly? And why would that protect WIC?
That's a really key distinction. So government funding basically falls into two big buckets, discretionary and mandatory. Discretionary spending needs those annual appropriation bills from Congress to keep flowing. If the bills don't pass, like now, those programs shut down. That's the fate we're in.
Got it.
Mandatory spending, though, things like Social Security, Medicare, that's set by permanent law. It doesn't need an annual vote to continue. So by trying to switch WIC to mandatory status, Democrats want to shield it permanently from these annual budget fights and future shutdowns.
Right. Insulate it from this kind of volatility.
Precisely.
Okay, that really sharpens the focus on the political maneuvering. But while all this is happening, the budget semantics,
Right.
the legislative tactics, what's the immediate cost, the tangible cost to federal workers?
Oh, the human cost is.
Yeah.
It's immediate and it's profound. We're definitely past the warning stage now.
Yeah.
The administration has started official mass layoffs. Sources are reporting around 4,000 federal workers across different agencies officially let go. Not just furloughed, but cut.
Wow. 4,000 layoffs. And
Yeah.
that's on top of the huge number of furloughs we saw earlier in the month, right?
Exactly. I mean, look at the IRS. They got hit hard really early on. Nearly half their workforce furloughed. That's, what, about 34,000 employees?
34,000 people.
Yeah. Think about that scale. People who are essential for collecting national revenue suddenly on unpaid leave because of political failure. It creates this huge drag on government function down the line,
Yeah.
especially, with tax season eventually coming up.
And now the really painful part, missed paychecks. We know Capitol Police staff missed their first full paycheck. The very people securing the building where this failure is happening, the irony is just stark.
It really highlights the disconnect, doesn't it? These employees, they're deemed essential, but they're not exempt from the funding lapse. They bear the brunt.
So who decides where the cuts hit hardest and what gets preserved? That's the OMB, the Office of Management and Budget.
That's where the OMB comes in, yes.
Yeah.
They're navigating this, trying to manage the cuts.
And how are they doing that? We heard about some specific mechanism, something tied to a very strangely named bill.
Right. They're using selective authority they have under a budget measure from a few years back.
Yeah.
Some on Capitol Hill apparently nicknamed it the One Big Beautiful Bill.
Okay.
And this bill basically gives OMB discretion during a funding lapse like this to shuffle funds within certain accounts. The idea is to selectively preserve high-priority functions.
Like military and law enforcement.
Primarily national security, defense, law enforcement, yes. Things the administration wants to keep running smoothly.
So it's a tool that lets them keep the Pentagon funded, keep those lights on, but at the same time impose targeted cuts elsewhere, like in health and education. Areas maybe less politically damaging in the short term.
That's precisely its political usefulness, you could say. It lets the administration minimize the immediate visible disruption in defense, while the unavoidable cuts happen in areas where the public outcry might take longer to build. It ensures the political pressure mounts mostly on the non-military side.
Okay, let's shift them. Let's look at the specific services under strain, because this is where the shutdown really starts hitting average people's lives. We mentioned WIC earlier.
The Women, Infants, Children program.
Sources flagged that the administration found a temporary fix using tariff money.
They did, yeah. About $300 million as a stopgap using tariff revenues. It was absolutely necessary to keep WIC running for now.
But it's temporary.
Absolutely essential to remember that. It's just a Band-Aid. It doesn't fix the long-term funding problem. It'll run out. So WIC is still vulnerable unless they get a full budget resolution or, that mandatory spending bill passes.
Okay. Beyond nutrition, I was really struck by the disruption to something called the Hospital at Home program. Sounds kind of niche, maybe, but its failure seems to be causing concerning ripples. What is it?
Yeah, it's actually a really valuable, quite innovative program supported by Medicare. It allows certain patients, often with complex needs, to get hospital-level care, but in their own homes.
Which is often better for them, safer, more comfortable.
Generally, yes. But because of the shutdown, the administration, the funding streams supporting it, they've been disrupted.
And the consequence? What happens when that gets disrupted?
The consequence is, risk aversion. Hospitals are getting nervous. They don't have clarity on future federal support, so they're pulling back from the program.
Meaning?
Meaning patients who are getting care at home are being moved back into regular hospital beds, traditional inpatient settings.
Which puts more pressure on hospitals.
Exactly. It increases the burden on physical hospital capacity, raises the risk of overcrowding, and that affects everyone who might need emergency care, right? It's an immediate, system-wide strain from a specific bureaucratic failure.
Wow. That really shows how these specific programs connect to the bigger system. And speaking of system strain, the sources point to a massive, tangible economic choke point, the real estate market.
Yes, this one is really concrete.
How is the shutdown stalling home closings?
The key is the National Flood Insurance Program, the NFIP. It's run by FEMA, and it needs continuous funding to operate.
And because appropriations lapsed.
It's suspended. Now, if you're buying a home in a flood-prone area, federal law usually requires you to have flood insurance to get a mortgage.
But if the NFIP is suspended, you can't get that insurance.
You can't get the required insurance. So the closing stalls. Can't finalize the deal.
And the impact.
It's staggering. Sources estimate about 3,600 home closings are potentially stalled per day the suspension goes on.
3,600 a day.
Per day. Think about the economic activity just frozen. hundreds of millions of dollars daily, plus immense stress and friction for thousands of families trying to buy or sell homes. The housing market just can't absorb that kind of daily disruption for long.
That's huge. And finally, there was this, well, frankly, bizarre example of the political toxicity bleeding into public infrastructure decisions, something with Homeland Security.
Ah, yes, the video.
Mhm.
So Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem put out this video message, reportedly blaming one party for the shutdown.
Okay.
What's really telling is that several major U.S. airports actually refused to air it on their public screens. They cited concerns about the video's really partisan tone, worries it could violate the Hatch Act, that's the law limiting political activity by federal employees.
So airports are pushing back against political messaging from a federal agency.
Seems like it. It shows that even public infrastructure partners are drawing lines,
Yeah.
signaling this deep institutional discomfort with the current political environment spilling over like this.
Okay. So we've covered the political games, the human cost to workers, the specific programs failing. If we step back now, connect the dots, what's the bigger picture risk here? Letting this drag on past week 3, what's the synthesis?
I think the synthesis is that these individual failures, they add up, they accumulate into massive systemic risk. We're already seeing lost productivity,
Yeah.
reduced economic confidence generally,
Right.
and those specific things like the 3,600 stalled home closings. They're symptoms of a wider problem. Delayed permits, stalled licenses, just administrative drag slowing down business everywhere.
And for programs like WIC, Hospital at Home, that clock on the temporary fixes is ticking louder now.
It really is. Yeah. And that's the biggest danger, I think. The threshold failure. Once those stopgaps run out the $300 million for WIC, the administrative workarounds elsewhere, these critical programs won't just struggle. They'll start to fail completely.
Which generates huge social instability.
Absolutely. And politically. You combine a failure in the social safety net with this morale crisis from federal workers missing paychecks. That creates massive volatility.
And that volatility can hit the markets too.
It certainly can and likely will.
Yeah.
The more uncertainty there is about the government's basic ability to function to pay its bills, the greater the strain on debt and credit markets. And that affects everything, right? Corporate borrowing costs, mortgage interest rates. This isn't just a DC spat anymore. It's a growing economic risk factor.
It really feels like every day just exponentially raises the stakes for whatever move the legislators make next, whether they keep playing these tactical games with standalone bills or finally get forced into something comprehensive.
That's exactly right. The outcome hinges entirely on whether these rising failures, the stalled homes, the patients moving back to hospitals, the families worried about WIC, generate enough outside pressure to force a political compromise.
Oh.
Or if the parties decide that the big ideological points they're fighting for is still worth more than the immediate tangible suffering this is causing.
So to wrap up our deep dive, the core issue is still this political refusal, mainly from the House, to negotiate terms before reopening. But the consequences, economic drag, real estate freezes, failing safety nets depend entirely on whether Congress sticks with these targeted fixes or finally moves on a full budget.
Yeah. And that leads to, well, a really interesting, maybe troubling thought for you to consider. This whole dynamic we're seeing,
Yeah.
where the most painful, visible problems get fixed one by one with these little standalone bills. Is this fundamentally changing how government works? If lawmakers figure out they can relieve the immediate crisis pressure without ever having to agree on a big, comprehensive long-term budget,
Could this become the new normal?
could this tactical maneuvering become the default mechanism for funding the government? Will those big annual spending bills become a thing of the past, replaced by just constant reactive crisis management through targeted bills?
That is a huge structural question hanging over all this, isn't it? Something to definitely chew on as we watch those next crucial votes.
Indeed.
Okay, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.